I never thought I'd be the kind of girl who'd post here, but I honestly don't know who else to talk to. My boyfriend Tyler and I had been together for almost 3 years. First, things were normal, great even. We had inside jokes, lazy Sundays on the couch, and plans to maybe get engaged someday. But over the past year, he changed. And when I say changed, I mean it's like I don't even recognize him anymore. It started small. Tyler got into K-dramas during the pandemic. Fine, no big deal, I even watched some with him. Then he got into K-pop, then into Korean food, then into every little detail about Korean culture. Again, nothing wrong with that in theory. But soon it became his entire personality. He'd stay up all night scrolling on forums and Twitter accounts, obsessing over idols, memorizing random facts, and even trying to teach himself the language through YouTube videos. First, I thought it was a harmless hobby. But slowly, it started bleeding into our relationship in ways that made me feel worthless. Tyler started comparing me to Korean women online. He'd send me photos of idols and say things like, "Look at her skin. See how flawless it is. Why don't you take care of yourself like that?" Or Korean women are just smarter and more disciplined than Western girls. Every time he said it, it cut me deeper, but he always laughed it off like I was overreacting. Soon, he wouldn't even touch me anymore. He used to be affectionate, holding my hand, kissing my forehead, hugging me from behind while I cooked. But then he pulled away completely. When I tried to cuddle with him, he'd shrug me off, muttering that I wasn't his type anymore. I asked him what that even meant, and he said flatly, "You're just not as beautiful as Asian women. I can't help what I'm attracted to." I should have left right then. I know that. But when you've built years with someone, you keep hoping they'll come back to you. The final straw, though, was money. He went behind my back and asked my parents for a loan. $15,000. He told them it was for a surprise trip for the two of us to Korea, and my parents, bless them, trusted him. They wanted to support us. But later, I found out he hadn't planned for me to go at all. He wanted the money for himself. When I confronted him, he blew up, yelling that I was ungrateful, that he was chasing his dream, and that I didn't understand him the way they would. He wouldn't even tell me what exactly he was planning. Then one morning I woke up and he was just gone. No note, no goodbye. His closet was half empty, his toothbrush missing, his car gone from the driveway. The only thing he left behind was a crumpled plane ticket receipt on the floor of his desk drawer. He didn't book one seat. He booked two, but the second name wasn't mine. When I found that ticket receipt, my heart sank so hard I thought I might throw up right there on the floor. His name was on one line and on the second some girl I'd never heard of. The name didn't even sound familiar. Definitely not a friend, not a coworker, not anyone I'd ever seen him mention. At that moment everything clicked. The late nights on his phone, the sudden distance, the way he treated me like I was disposable. He'd been planning this for months, and I was just too blind to see it. I tore through the rest of his things like a madwoman, desperate for answers. Old texts on the iPad he left behind, browser history, even scraps of paper on his desk. It was like digging through the wreckage of a life I thought I knew. And the more I found, the worse it got. He'd been messaging this girl constantly. Photos, inside jokes, talking about how excited he was to finally be with someone who understood him. The worst part? He had screenshotted pictures of me, private pictures I'd sent him, and sent them to her with captions like, "This is why I need better." I sat there shaking, my chest hollow, my head buzzing like static. 3 years together, and he had reduced me to nothing more than a cautionary tale to his new obsession. When my parents called later that day, asking when we were leaving for Korea, I broke down. I had to tell them everything. The money, the lies, the other woman. My mom sobbed. My dad swore he'd hunt Tyler down himself. But what hurt most was the look in their eyes when they realized their trust, their hard-earned money, had been thrown away on a fantasy. I kept replaying our last weeks together in my mind. The way he'd barely looked at me, barely touched me. The way he'd dismissed me every time I asked what was wrong. I thought maybe he was stressed, maybe he was depressed, maybe I could fix it if I just tried harder. But no, he didn't want fixing. He wanted replacing. That night I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever really known him at all. And then it hit me. If he was willing to vanish without a word, drain my parents' savings, and fly across the world with someone he barely knew, what else was he capable of? I checked my phone and sure enough there were messages from him. Not to me, left open on the iPad. He told her he was done with his old life, that he was never looking back, that I was weak and boring compared to her. And the girl, she wasn't Korean at all. She wasn't even from Asia. She was just another American girl online, playing dress-up in cosplay, posting selfies in hanbok and filters to make her eyes look different. Tyler had thrown everything away for a fantasy, and for the first time I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. I spent the next few days in a haze that felt like sleepwalking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that other girl's name on the ticket receipt. It looped in my mind like a song stuck on repeat. The cruel irony was that I never even knew she existed, but she clearly knew all about me. Tyler had made sure of that. The iPad he left behind was a goldmine of betrayal. I scrolled through endless messages where he talked about me like I was some kind of broken toy. Things I trusted him with in confidence. My insecurities, my struggles, even stupid little quirks. He turned into ammunition to humiliate me in front of her. She doesn't even wear makeup unless it's for work. She has no ambition. She's just stuck. Korean girls would never let themselves go like this. Reading those words made me want to crawl out of my own skin. It was like my life had been split into two versions, the one I lived and the one he described to her. twisting every flaw until I barely recognized myself. And she laughed along with him. Little heart emojis. Stickers of pretty anime girls blushing while he tore me down. What shattered me most wasn't even the cheating. It was how deliberate it all felt. He didn't just fall for someone else. He built a case against me, piece by piece, and presented it to her like a sales pitch. See? This is why I need you. She'll never be enough. I wanted to hate her. This stranger who suddenly had a boarding pass into the life I'd built with him. But the more I read, the more I realized she was just playing a role. She wasn't Korean. She wasn't even close. She used heavy filters, exaggerated her accent when she posted videos, and parroted random cultural facts she probably Googled. It was all cosplay, and Tyler ate it up like gospel. He wanted the fantasy so badly he didn't care if it was real. And that was when it really hit me. Tyler didn't just betray me, he betrayed himself. He abandoned reality for a dream version of life where everything was glossy, perfect, and staged. He wanted to live inside an aesthetic Instagram feed. Not in the messy world where bills pile up, skin breaks out, and people sometimes argue about who forgot to take out the trash. I couldn't stop thinking about the money. $15,000. That wasn't just a trip. That was tuition for someone's kid. That was part of my parents' retirement. That was years of their hard work gone. My dad's hands literally have scars from decades in construction. And now Tyler had stolen the sweat from his palms for some girl who thought kimchi was a quirky snack food. My mom cried herself to sleep the night I told her. I could hear her through the wall when I stayed with them for a night. My dad paced the house like a caged animal, muttering curses under his breath, stopping only to repeat the same thing. We trusted him. We let him in our family. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't let it end with Tyler running off into the sunset like a coward while we were left to pick up the pieces. So I made a decision. I was going to find him. It wasn't about getting him back. I knew that was impossible and I didn't even want it. It was about answers. About making him look me in the eye and admit what he did. About making sure my parents got their money back one way or another. The first clue was that ticket receipt. I googled the airline, the dates, and cross-checked with the name of the other passenger. It didn't take long before I pieced it together. A direct flight to Seoul, leaving in 3 days. My heart thudded in my chest as I stared at the screen. 3 days. That was all I had if I wanted to confront him before he disappeared across the world. For a moment, I thought about calling the police. But what could I even say? My boyfriend tricked my parents into giving him money and is running away with another woman? It sounded pathetic and I didn't have the kind of proof they'd need. All I had was a pile of messages and a receipt, which made it look more like a messy breakup than a crime. So I did the only thing I could think of. I reached out to one of his closest friends, Mark. I hadn't spoken to him in months because Tyler had slowly pushed me away from all of his friends, saying they were bad influences. But Mark had always been kind to me when Tyler wasn't around, slipping me smiles and casual conversations that made me feel human. When I called, his voice was heavy with guilt, like he'd been expecting this. I was wondering when you'd find out, he said quietly. What do you mean? I demanded. Tyler's been talking about this girl for a while. He told me he was serious. Said he was leaving everything behind to start fresh. I told him he was insane, but he wouldn't listen. He kept saying you didn't understand him. My throat closed up. Did he tell you about the money? Mark hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, he bragged about it actually. Said your parents believed in him more than you ever did. The words stabbed me like knives. I clenched my fist around the phone so hard my knuckles cracked. Do you know where he is right now? He's been staying at an Airbnb near the airport. He wanted to be close before the flight. Mark paused. Listen, I know you don't owe him a damn thing, but if you go, be careful. He's not the same Tyler you used to know. It's like he's brainwashed himself. That night, I drove past the address Mark gave me. A small, nondescript rental on a quiet street, blinds drawn, no sign of life. I sat in my car, heart racing, palms sweaty, staring at the faint glow of a TV through the curtains. He was in there. The man I once loved, the man who laughed with me in bed, who promised me forever, who now thought I was ugly, useless, and disposable. I wanted to storm inside, scream, demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I drove home and collapsed on my bed, shaking with rage and betrayal, knowing I had 2 choices. Let him leave or confront him before that plane took off. And the truth is, I don't think I can let him leave. I didn't sleep the night before I went to the Airbnb. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I'd say and how I'd say it without crying, without begging, without slipping back into the version of me who still believed he would come to his senses. I printed the airline receipt, screenshots of the messages, the bank transfer my parents made to his account, and even wrote bullet points on an index card like I was going to court. 1. You took $15,000 from my parents under false pretenses. 2. You booked 2 tickets without me. 3. You sent my private photos to another woman. 4. You will either wire the money back now or sign a written confession/you on video. I tucked the stack into a folder, set my phone to record with Do Not Disturb on, and drove before the sun broke the horizon so I'd arrive at his door before he could slip into the airport or a rideshare. The Airbnb was exactly the kind of place people rent to vanish. Beige, anonymous, 2 blocks from a long-term parking lot and 15 minutes from the international terminal. I recognized his car out front. For a long minute I just sat there with the engine off, feeling my pulse in my gums. Then I grabbed the folder and went. My knuckles hovered over the door before I finally knocked. It opened too fast like he'd been standing on the other side listening. And there he was, Tyler, but not the Tyler I met at a backyard barbecue on a humid July when he spilled beer on my sandals and apologized 3 times. This version had the razor-straight fringe and ash-brown dye job you see in idol fan cams, skin glazed with 7 layers of skincare, oversized streetwear hanging off him like a costume. He'd even swapped his sneakers for those chunky platforms that add 2 inches to a photo. For half a second he looked surprised. Then he smiled like an actor hitting his mark. Wow, you actually came. You actually stole 15 grand, I said, and pushed past him into the living room. The place smelled like sheet masks and instant ramen. A stack of textbooks on the coffee table. Learn Korean in 30 days, topic practice, a printout titled, How to Teach English in Korea Without a Degree. Next to it, 2 open suitcases, neatly rolled t-shirts, a passport sleeve, and a box of brand new camera gear with tags still on. You planned a whole life without me, I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. Correction, he said lightly, closing the door with his foot. I planned a whole life I actually want. He leaned against the wall like we were at a party. You could have supported me, you know? You asked my parents for a surprise couples trip. You made my mom cry when she found your receipt. I slid the paper onto the table between the skincare and the visa guide. Who is she? He tilted his head, practiced, bored. You don't get to ask questions about my girlfriend. Your girlfriend? I held up the iPad screenshot of the DMs where he sent her my photos with captions that made my stomach turn. The cosplayer who uses Facetune like foundation? The one who told you Gochujang was basically sriracha but cuter? Did you even notice she lives in Ohio? His jaw twitched. It was small but I saw it. You're jealous, he said. This is what people do when someone levels up. They drag you back so they don't have to look at their own lives. I'm not jealous, I said, and I meant it in a way I hadn't the day before. I'm angry. I'm done. And I'm not leaving without either a transfer confirmation for $15,000 or a signed confession that you got the money under false pretenses. You can choose which one. He laughed then, loud and fake, like an audience was supposed to join in. You think you can threaten me? Not a threat, I said, sliding my phone out, recording already running. Evidence. You know what's funny? Fraud doesn't need me to love you for it to count. He pushed off the wall, eyes flicking to the phone, to the folder, to the suitcases. I could see the math problem assemble behind his pupils. How much time until check-in, how much until she arrives, how long it would take to talk me into leaving, whether I'd blow up his flight if he stonewalled. You're being dramatic, he said softer. You know your mom always freaks out first. I was going to pay them back. With what? Ad revenue from your fantasy vlog? Affiliate links to serums? I let the bite out because kindness had been treated like weakness for months. You told her you'd be my wife. He snapped, tone turning mean in an instant like a switch flipped. You told her you'd move in with me. You asked about rings. I asked what your timeline was, I said, and felt that cold clarity rise like a steel rod in my spine. You told me you were saving. You asked my parents to float you while you became someone else's boyfriend. He opened his mouth and shut it again. He ran a hand over his jaw, careful not to smear the skincare shine. You're ugly when you're mad, he said finally, and there it was, the same dagger he'd twisted in me 100 little times. Asian beauty, disciplined, smarter, prettier, better. I let it hit and pass through. You keep using Asian like a personality, I said, but you don't love Korean culture. You love a fantasy that isn't held by real women with real preferences who aren't interested in being your mirror. You don't want a partner. You want a pedestal that talks back sweetly. He rolled his eyes. God, Western girls always make everything about feelings. Western girls, I repeated, because sometimes you need to hold a person's words up to the light so they can see the rot. Okay, here are my feelings. Zelle or bank wire? He scoffed again, but his gaze cut to his backpack. You can't do this. I can file a police report with screenshots, bank records, and a recording of you admitting you took the money under false pretenses, I said calmly. I can also email this entire folder to your parents, your employer, and your fantasy girlfriend so she knows the trip she's packing for is paid for by a woman you called stupid. The door clicked then and swung in an inch before someone pushed it the rest of the way with the suitcase wheel. She was shorter than me, early 20s, pretty in that dewy TikTok way that starts with youth and ends with 3 filters. For a second her smile was bright and direct, until she saw me. Oh, she said, hand hovering over her mouth. Her eyes flicked to Tyler, to the suitcases, to my folder. Whose? She's leaving, Tyler said sharply. She's obsessed. She's been stalking me. I stepped sideways so she could see the paper on the table. I'm the girlfriend who was never invited, I said. And the daughter of the people who paid for your trip. The girl's forehead creased. She looked from me to him, confusion turning to something sturdier. Tyler. He didn't look at her. His nostrils flared. Don't listen to her. She's trying to make drama because she can't handle. You told me you paid for this with your bonus, the girl said, voice thin with realization. You said your family was proud. The corner of his carefully glossed mouth twitched. He finally looked at her and turned on the soft voice he used to use on me when he wanted me to stop asking questions. Babe, this is what I warned you about. She's jealous, she's threatened, You sent me her photos, the girl said, staring right at him now like she'd finally figured out where the camera was. You told me she was lazy and gross. Her gaze swung back to me. I'm sorry. Came out small, but it came. I nodded once. You didn't know. She doesn't get a say, Tyler snapped, and there it was again, the quiet violence of the man who needed you to be the less than so his story could work. This is between us. It stopped being between us the second you roped in my parents, I said. Wire. Transfer. Now. He stared at me like he could will us back into the living room where I'd cook on Sundays, and he'd scroll on his phone sending DMs to women whose names I didn't know yet. Then he laughed soft and ugly. I don't have it, he said. The girl flinched. He didn't. I used most of it. Flights. Airbnb. New gear. And I put a deposit on a studio in Seoul. I told you, I'm building a brand. With stolen money, I said. We're done playing. Here's what happens instead. You open your banking app and send what's left to my parents right now while I record. Then you sign an IOU with a total or repayment schedule, and a line that says you obtained the original sum by lying about a couple's trip. You violate it and I file a police report, and a civil claim and blast the receipts to every inbox with your last name. He bristled, but his eyes had gone glassy. Panic was finally pushing through the serum. You can't blackmail me. It's not blackmail, I said, sliding the pen across the table. It's consequences. The girl swallowed. Tyler, just fix it. He finally turned on her and it was like watching a stage light swing too hard and shatter. You said you were different, he hissed. You said you got it. Not like her. I thought I did, she said, holding her suitcase handle like a lifeline. Until you lied about how you paid for me. She looked at me again. I'm sorry, she said, stronger. I'll pay back my ticket. I have a savings. I didn't know. The kindness hit someplace that had been scraped raw. Thank you, I said and meant it. Tyler stared at the floor a long time, jaw grinding. Then he grabbed his phone. His fingers trembled. He opened the banking app, glancing up like I might snatch it, and typed. The girl watched the numbers with a tight mouth. The ping hit my phone a second later. $4, $9.20, 13. A fifth of the debt. I nodded at the folder, flipped to the template I'd written last night in a fury that now felt like grace, and clicked a pen. He scoffed at the neat lines, then signed his name anyway. I asked him to say the words on video. He did, eyes burning, each syllable like a nail in the story he'd been building on someone else's dime. I sent copies to my dad and emailed one to myself and another to Mark with a single line. If he runs, you testify. Mark replied 2 minutes later. Yes. The girl was already at the door when Tyler tried to gather his script back up. We can still make the flight, he said, voice pitched high, desperate. She looked at him like the light had finally come up in the theater and all the plywood was showing. I'm not getting on a plane with a man who steals from the people who loved him, she said and walked out. The door shut. The Airbnb felt smaller. Tyler stared at me with something between hatred and the kind of grief you feel when you realize the mirror won't lie for you anymore. You ruined my life, he said. No, I said. You did. I just put it in writing. He laughed again, hollow. You'll never find anyone who loves you like. You're right, I said and picked up the folder, my phone, my name. I hope I never do. I left him in that beige room with his sheet masks and his textbooks and the hollow where a better man could have stood. And out in the morning light I sat behind my wheel and let my hands shake for as long as they needed. Then I drove to my parents' house and handed my dad the transfer screenshot and the signed IOU and watched some of the lines around his mouth loosen. He didn't say he was proud. He didn't need to. He made coffee and poured my mom a cup and kissed the top of her head while she cried into her hands, and somewhere under the boiling grief a tiny hot coal of relief glowed because at least now the truth had a shape we could hold. Later that night I opened one last message on the iPad that had stayed signed in like a kindness from a universe that was done letting me pretend. It was from Mark. He's trying to blame you. He's telling people you weaponized his culture. Don't take the bait. I typed back, I won't. Then I blocked Tyler everywhere and I didn't check his feeds because every time I've looked for him I've lost a little more of me. I booked my own therapy appointment for next week, sent my parents a repayment plan for the remainder I would chase down through the courts if I had to, and that night I sat in my dark, quiet apartment and ate ramen out of the pot with a window open, and for the first time in months nothing inside me apologized for being hungry. I thought that after confronting Tyler at the Airbnb, after getting at least part of the money back and watching his fantasy collapse in front of that girl, I'd feel some kind of closure. I thought maybe the anger would cool, or the weight would lift off my chest. But the truth is, it didn't. The betrayal lingered like a stain you can't scrub out, and no amount of logic or paperwork could erase the way he made me feel about myself. 4 days I replayed every conversation we'd ever had. The way he'd say, you'd look prettier if you tried harder in front of the mirror. The time he sent me a photo of an idol mid-performance and wrote, now this is what dedication looks like. As if my entire worth was a joke compared to a stranger on stage. The time he stopped reaching for my hand in public, shrugging me off like I was an embarrassing habit he'd outgrown. I realized how much of me had been chipped away long before he left. How I'd swallowed my protests, laughed off his comments, forced myself to believe that if I just loved him enough, he'd come back. Instead, he left me to rot in the shadow of a fantasy that never even existed. But then the real aftermath hit. The gossip. Tyler couldn't just disappear quietly. He started spinning his story online almost immediately. Through screenshots from Mark and whispers from mutuals, I learned what he was saying about me. He painted me as the bitter ex who couldn't handle his success. He claimed I stole his money back because I was jealous of his new girlfriend. He twisted the confrontation at the Airbnb into a sob story about how I stormed in, screaming and hysterical, trying to sabotage his future. He made posts about how Western women don't understand loyalty, and how I never supported his dreams. And people believed him, or at least some did. His little online community of stans, Other guys just like him who fetishized an entire culture instead of respecting it. Patted him on the back, telling him he was brave for breaking free. They called me names, laughed at me, made me out to be the villain in his perfect little drama. The girl from the Airbnb though, she didn't stay silent. A week later she reached out. Her message was simple. You were right. I'm sorry. I blocked him. She told me she confronted him about everything after I left, and he lost it. Called her ungrateful, told her she was just like me, accused her of ruining his destiny. She packed her things and flew home the next day. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. So tired of his voice echoing through every corner of my life, twisting the narrative so that no matter what I did, I was the one left broken. My parents tried to shield me. My dad said we'd pursue the rest of the money through small claims court if we had to. My mom hugged me every time she passed me in the kitchen, whispering, "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." But deep down, part of me still believed the things Tyler said. That I wasn't pretty enough. That I wasn't smart enough. That I'd never measure up to the fantasy women he worshipped online. It wasn't until I sat in my therapist's office, tissues in my lap, voice cracking as I repeated his words out loud, that it finally hit me. None of that was ever about me. It was about him. His insecurities, his emptiness, his need to project all his self-hate onto me until I carried it for him. He needed you to be small so he could feel big, my therapist said gently. But you were never small. He just couldn't handle standing next to someone real. For the first time, I let myself cry without shame. Because she was right. I had spent years letting him chip away at me, but I wasn't broken. I was still here. I was still me. And maybe that was the closure I needed. Not watching him crash and burn, not dragging him into court, not even getting the money back. But remembering that I was still here. That I still had a future. One that didn't require me to be anyone's fantasy but my own damn self. Still, some nights when I'm alone and the house is quiet, I wonder where he is now. Whether he made it to Korea after all, or if he's still bouncing between airbombs chasing a dream that doesn't exist. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, about the woman he discarded like trash. And then I remember, he doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I finally stopped letting him define me. The weeks after Tyler's disappearance from my life felt like standing in the middle of a house fire after the flames had already eaten through the walls. The smoke lingered, everything smelled burnt. And even though the danger was technically over, the wreckage kept reminding me of what I'd lost. My parents were the ones most insistent about chasing the rest of the money. My dad especially couldn't let it go. $15,000 wasn't just a number on a bank screen. It was years of his overtime, years of skipped vacations, years of tightening belts when bills piled up. Seeing his face the night I showed him Tyler's partial repayment burned into me. He didn't rage like I expected. He just went quiet in a way I'd never seen before, like part of his trust in the world had collapsed. So I agreed to move forward legally. We filed in small claims court, attached every scrap of evidence I'd collected, the airline receipt, the bank records, the signed IOU, screenshots of his messages where he admitted using the money. Mark agreed to testify if needed. Even the girl from the Airbnb sent me a statement saying she hadn't known about the loan, that Tyler had misled her too. The day I dropped the paperwork off at the courthouse, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the stamped copy in my hands. It should have felt like victory, but instead I felt hollow. I kept wondering how my life had twisted into this. Me, a woman who once thought she'd be planning an engagement party by now, instead piecing together a fraud case against the man I thought was my future. But life didn't wait for me to feel ready. Tyler didn't stop posting. He doubled down online, spinning his narrative even harder. He made TikToks talking about toxic exes who hold you back. He posted story times about me to his small but loyal following, painting me as some jealous shrew who couldn't understand Korean culture. The comments made my skin crawl. People who didn't know me at all were calling me bitter, ugly, lazy. They said things like, "Of course she's mad he leveled up. Western women always do this." And I'll admit it, I spiraled for a while. I'd scroll through those videos at 2 a.m., reading comment after comment until my chest hurt and my eyes stung. I wanted to reply, to defend myself, to scream the truth into every phone screen. But then I'd hear my therapist's voice in my head. Every second you spend fighting his lies is a second you give him power. Stop feeding the story he wrote. Write your own. So I stopped looking. Cold turkey. I deleted TikTok from my phone, blocked every mutual who reposted his garbage, and told my parents to ignore whatever they heard. And slowly, the static in my brain started to quiet. Meanwhile, Tyler was unraveling without me even lifting a finger. Mark sent me updates. Tyler never made it to Korea. The partial wire to my parents drained his account, so he couldn't cover the balance on the apartment lease he bragged about. The girl he tried to run off with ghosted him completely. His little brand collapsed before it even started. He was couch hopping, spinning lies to anyone who would listen, but his stories were all inconsistent. People were starting to see through him. It should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, it just made me sad. Sad that the man I gave 3 years of my life to was so empty inside he had to invent a whole new identity just to feel like someone. Sad that he couldn't love himself enough to love anyone else. But here's the thing. Sadness doesn't last forever if you don't let it. Slowly, I started putting myself back together. I took up running again, something I'd stopped because Tyler once sneered, "Cardio makes you bulky." I ran every morning, even when my legs screamed, because every step felt like reclaiming a piece of me he'd tried to shrink. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, people he'd driven away by saying they were a bad influence. Sitting in diners at 1 a.m. with greasy fries and real laughter felt like breathing after months underwater. Most importantly, I stopped looking in the mirror and asking myself if I was enough. Enough compared to who? Enough for what? Tyler's measuring stick was rotten, warped by obsession and self-hate. I decided the only person I had to measure up to was the me who deserved peace. The court date came quicker than I expected. I sat across from him in that sterile room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the judge flipping through the file of evidence. Tyler tried to perform, of course, slick words about misunderstandings, about how the money was an investment in our future, about how I was just vindictive after a breakup. But the evidence was too solid. The judge didn't buy it for a second. When the ruling came, full repayment plus fees, Tyler's face cracked in a way I'll never forget. The swagger drained out of him. He looked small, pathetic. For once, his words didn't protect him. For once, reality punched back. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. It wasn't just about the money, it was about finally proving in a space that mattered that I wasn't crazy, that what he did was real, that I wasn't just a bitter ex screaming into the void. That night, my dad opened a beer for the first time since the whole ordeal started. My mom hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat against mine. And for the first time since Tyler vanished, our house didn't feel haunted by him anymore. Do I still think about him? Sometimes. Ghosts linger, even after the house is rebuilt. But now when I picture him, it's not with longing or anger. It's with pity. Because I survived him. I healed. And he's still stuck chasing a fantasy that will never love him back. I thought the court ruling would be the last time I ever saw Tyler. After the judge ordered him to repay the money, after my parents finally got their dignity back, I assumed he'd vanish into whatever hole he crawled from. I was wrong. A few months later, I was walking downtown after work. It was spring, the kind of evening where the air feels warm but the breeze still bites. I just finished grabbing dinner with two friends I'd reconnected with, laughing so hard my cheeks hurt. When I saw him, at first I almost didn't recognize him. His dyed hair had grown out in uneven patches, the glossy skincare glow replaced with blotchy red irritation. The oversized streetwear was gone, replaced with a faded hoodie and ripped jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He was thinner too, like the stress had eaten through him. But his eyes, those same sharp, hungry eyes, snapped to me the second I passed. "Louise," he said, voice hoarse. I froze. My friends looked at me, confused, but I held up a hand, silently begging them to give me a minute. They lingered a few feet away, hesitant. "What do you want, Tyler?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. He stepped closer, shoving his hands deep into his pockets. I need to explain. There's nothing left to explain. The court already did that for you. He flinched at that, like the memory of losing in front of a judge still burned. I know I messed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But Korea didn't work out. That girl left. Everyone left. I don't have anyone anymore. That's not my problem, I said sharply. You made your choices. He looked at me like a man drowning, reaching for anything to pull him back above water. I loved you, Louise. I just got lost. The culture, the expectations, the pressure. No, I cut in. Don't you dare twist this into some sob story. You didn't get lost. You chose. You chose to lie to my parents. You chose to humiliate me online. You chose to compare me to women you didn't even know, to tear me down until I didn't recognize myself anymore. You don't get to stand here and rewrite that. His mouth opened and closed like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. For once his words failed him. Please, he said finally, his voice breaking. I just need a place to stay. Just for a few days. Until I figure things out. I almost laughed. The audacity. After everything, he thought I'd still be his safety net. That I'd still rescue him, patch him up, and send him back into the world to hurt me again. No, I said simply. You're not my responsibility anymore. You never were. His face twisted, the desperation morphing into anger. You think you're better than me now? No, I said quietly. I've always been better than the way you treated me. I just finally believe it now. For a second I thought he might hit me. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened in his pockets, his whole body trembling with rage. But then he saw my friend step closer, ready to intervene, and his courage shrank. He spat on the sidewalk, muttered something under his breath, and stalked away, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. I stood there, my heart racing, my hands shaking. But underneath the adrenaline was something else, relief. Because that was it. The last thread. He had tried one last time to pull me back and I didn't let him. That night, I wrote in my journal. He doesn't own me anymore. Not my heart. Not my story. Not my future. And for the first time in years, I truly believed it. Life after Tyler was like walking out of a long tunnel and realizing I had been holding my breath the entire way through. Every day without him was a lesson in relearning what it meant to be myself again. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to criticism, to backhanded comments, to the constant weight of never being enough. At first, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd brush my hair in the mirror and hear his voice in my head. Korean girls have perfect skin, you should really try harder. I'd go for a run and remember him laughing, saying cardio would make me bulky. Even simple things like ordering takeout on a Friday night felt laced with his judgment. But slowly, I started to overwrite those voices with my own. I dyed my hair the shade of red I'd always wanted but never tried because Tyler once said it wouldn't suit my face. I joined a local art class, painting clumsy sunflowers on canvas, and no one told me it was a waste of time. I signed up for weekend hiking trips with friends, laughing until my chest hurt at the top of trails I would have never attempted with him because sweating wasn't attractive. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. One night, I was invited to a friend's birthday party at a rooftop bar downtown. I almost didn't go, crowd still made me anxious, and part of me worried about seeing Tyler again in public. But my therapist encouraged me to say yes to life, so I went. That's where I met Ethan. He wasn't flashy, not the type to dominate a room. He was just kind. The kind of guy who asked how you were doing and actually listened to the answer. He worked in IT, cracked dry jokes that caught me off guard, and didn't flinch when I mentioned my messy breakup. He didn't push for details, just nodded and said, "Sounds like you've been through a lot. I'm glad you're here." We started talking more after that night. Coffee dates turned into long walks in the park, which turned into movie nights where he'd bring popcorn and fall asleep halfway through. He never compared me to anyone. He never made me feel small. If anything, he kept reminding me that I was more capable than I gave myself credit for. At first, I was terrified of letting myself fall. What if he left too? What if he turned out to be another Tyler in disguise? But Ethan was patient. He didn't rush me. He just showed up consistently until I started to believe he meant it. My parents noticed the change before I did. My mom said I was laughing again. Real laughter that reached my eyes. My dad started inviting Ethan over for Sunday dinners, grilling him with the kind of suspicious questions dads ask, but eventually relaxing when he saw how genuine Ethan was. But even as things moved forward, the past still clung to me in small ways. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll past one of Tyler's ghost accounts online. He still posted here and there, ranting about toxic women, or bragging about plans that never seemed to happen. His following had shrunk, his engagement tanked. He looked thinner, angrier, like a man trapped in the echo of his own lies. And every time I saw his face on a screen, that old fear pricked at me. Fear that he'd show up again. Fear that he'd try to twist the narrative one more time. Fear that somehow I'd still never be free of him. But then I'd look over at Ethan, snoring softly next to me, arm draped across my waist, and remember that I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't Tyler's punching bag. I wasn't a shadow of someone else's fantasy. I was me. And for once that was enough. I really believed I was done with him. After the court, after that last encounter on the street, after finally feeling like I could breathe again, I thought Tyler had faded into the background of my life like an old nightmare. But nightmares have a way of clawing their way back when you least expect it. Started online. At first, I noticed weird comments on some of my Instagram photos. Anonymous accounts with no profile pictures writing things like, "Not even close to Asian beauty," or "Tyler leveled up without you." I rolled my eyes, blocked them, told myself it was just trolls. But then the comments got more personal. Details only Tyler could have shared. "Funny you're smiling now. Didn't you cry in the courtroom when you realized you were still obsessed with him? Or your dad's money wasn't even yours to begin with. You're pathetic." The worst part? They started popping up on Ethan's account too. Photos of us at the park, of him holding my hand, captioned with garbage from faceless accounts. "She'll leave you like she left Tyler," or "Ask her why she had to beg her parents for rent." Ethan noticed, of course. He asked gently if I thought it was Tyler. My stomach twisted because I already knew the answer. I wanted to ignore it, but then Mark called me one night, his voice low and urgent. "Louise, I think you should know Tyler's been talking about you again. Not just online. In person." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "He showed up at a party last week. He was drunk, ranting about how you ruined his life. Said you stole his future, that you brainwashed his new girlfriend into leaving him. He was telling anyone who'd listen that you owe him an apology." I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "An apology? After everything he did?" "Yeah," Mark sighed. "He's spiraling. Worse than before. Look, I don't want to scare you, but he's obsessed. He's rewriting the whole story so he doesn't have to face what he did. And I don't know how far he'll go." The next morning, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. No envelope, no name, just one line scrawled in messy handwriting. "You can't erase me." My blood ran cold. He knew where I lived. I called the police, of course. Filed a report, showed them the note, the screenshots of the harassment, even told them about Mark's warning. They nodded, wrote everything down, told me to stay alert, but without direct threats, their hands were tied. Ethan stayed with me after that, refusing to let me be alone. He tried to keep things light, making jokes about being my personal bodyguard. But I could see the worry in his eyes every time we heard a knock at the door or footsteps in the hall. I hated that Tyler still had this power over me, that even after everything he could still make my chest tighten, still haunt the edges of my peace. But this time was different. I wasn't alone. I had Ethan. I had my parents. I had proof, allies, people who actually believed me. Tyler could spin whatever story he wanted online, but the truth was written in court documents and IOUs with his signature on them. Still, late at night, when the world was quiet, I couldn't help but wonder. How far was he willing to go to keep himself from disappearing completely? I always thought the end would be clean. A judge's gavel, a signed paper, a block number. That's what closure was supposed to look like. But Tyler didn't vanish like that. He didn't fade out. He lingered, clung, scratched at the edges of my life like mold that grows back no matter how many times you bleach it. The note under my door haunted me. I kept it sealed in a plastic bag in case the police ever needed it. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way the letters were carved into the paper, jagged, almost desperate. You can't erase me. That was the heart of it. He couldn't accept that he had become irrelevant, that I had walked away, that his story no longer controlled me. 2 weeks after that note, it escalated. I was leaving my office late, the kind of night where the streets are mostly empty and the street lamps flicker like they're tired too. Ethan had offered to pick me up, but I told him not to. I didn't want to feel like a prisoner in my own routine. I regret that now. As I crossed the lot to my car, I felt it, that prickle on the back of my neck, the sixth sense that someone is watching. I turned and there he was, leaning against the side of the building, hoodie pulled up, shadows hiding half his face. "Louise," he called softly, like we were still something. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tightened my grip on my keys, kept my voice steady. "Stay away from me, Tyler. I've told you before." He pushed off the wall, taking a slow step toward me. "I just want to talk." "You've lost that right." His laugh was hollow, sharp. "You think you're so much better now, don't you? With him. With your little new life. But you'll never be free of me. I'm a part of you." I unlocked my car with shaking hands, slid inside, and hit the lock button as he reached the door. His palm slammed against the window, making me flinch. His face was inches from mine, twisted with anger and something darker. "You ruined me," he hissed. "You took everything. My future, my reputation, my money. You think people believe you? You think anyone cares about your little sob story?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Yes," I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "They do. That's why you're here in a parking lot at midnight, and I'm not." For a second, something flickered in his gaze. Rage, maybe. Or the realization that his power over me was gone. He slammed his hand against the window one more time, then stumbled back, muttering curses into the night as he disappeared into the dark. I sat there shaking until I could breathe again. Then I drove straight to the police station. This time I wasn't just filing a report. I pressed charges for harassment and stalking. I handed over the note, the screenshots, the video from the security camera outside my building that caught him lurking there. And for once, the system listened. They issued a restraining order, warned him formally. Mark texted me later that Tyler was panicking, furious that the system was against him. I almost laughed at the irony. Tyler had built his entire fake identity around control, and now control was the one thing he no longer had. After that, things got quiet. No more notes, no more comments, no more shadows in the corner of my vision. Tyler finally faded the way he should have all along, into irrelevance. But the scars he left didn't vanish with him. Even now, when Ethan brushes my hair back and kisses my temple, I sometimes flinch before I remember I'm safe. When I see a man in a hoodie on a dark street, my chest tightens until I remind myself it's not him. Healing isn't a straight line. It's jagged, messy, full of nights where I still feel 12 steps behind my own peace. But here's the difference. I don't let those scars define me anymore. Tyler wanted me small, insecure, replaceable. But I'm none of those things. I'm stronger now, sharper, louder. I reclaimed myself piece by piece, and no one can take that from me again. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. Whether he finally moved on, or whether he's still out there chasing a fantasy that will never fill the hole inside him. But it doesn't matter. Because this is the last time I'll ever write his name. This story doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to me.